Letter 24. A Pox Off Your Home. Dear Lady Mary, I often like to play a game with myself when I am standing in long lines at the post office, on endless car rides, while waiting for delayed planes in airports, or sometimes even when I am just drifting off to sleep. I like to think of all my blessings, all of the rich and wonderful things in my life. I make lists of all that I cherish about the various parts of my life, the people and animals I love, nature, my glass-blowing, my work, and my country. As concerns my country, I like to make lists of all the odd, magical, stupendous, and even silly things it has given to the world, such as Bob Dylan, jazz, modern medicine, democracy, religious freedom, William Faulkner, and hamburgers. I also play this game with France and with Turkey. Indeed, perhaps Turkey did not give the world the Reformation, the Enlightenment, or the Industrial Revolution, yet it has throughout history, in ways both small and large, been a player on the world stage. On a personal level, Turkey has given me much. I hope you can see that in these letters I am writing you, Lady Mary. Oh, not only an appreciation for art and architecture and talking stones, and a sense of another culture, and an opportunity to cross physical and metaphysical bridges, but also the warmth of very human relationships, a faith in humanity, a lesson in determination, and a belief in the goodness of my fellow man, and in humanity as a whole. All vigorous cultures borrow and share amongst each other. Turkey has shared with the world its realm of comfort and luxury, with such furnishings as the divan, the kiosk, and the sofa. The concept of cleanliness, with thick Turkish towels, the steam bath, the massage culture, and the fashions of the kaftan, the turban, fine brocades and velvets, the cassock, and Orientalism, and the odalisque. It has shared the delights of its table, and we now cannot imagine life without coffee and yogurt, or pastrami, halva, shish kebabs, lokum, or caviar. I wonder if every Frenchman realizes each morning, as he sips his café au lait with his croissant, that his breakfast was brought to him by the Turks. Our vocabulary has been enriched with administrative terms such as pasha, lackey, bashi-bazouk, and sanjak. Turkish caravans brought the luxurious treasures of the Far East to the salons of the fine homes of Europe. Turkish culture offered the canon of world literature, the heartbreakingly arresting verses of Rumi and Yunus Emre. It shared the lessons of its powerful creators like Sinan and Ataturk. Turkey gave us the game of bridge, the Turkey carpet, and the most magnificent of flowers, the tulip. Yet perhaps the most important legacy that Turkey has given the world was one that you made possible, Lady Mary. Yes, it was due to you that the Ottomans could leave a lasting mark on the world. Oddly enough, by not leaving marks, Turkey gave the world the soft cheeks of children to kiss. You know what I am talking about. When you were 26 years old, enchanting the salons and courts of London with your beauty and wit, you were dealt a devastating blow that would have buckled other women in your entourage. But not you, Lady Mary. Right before Christmas, 1715, you were struck with smallpox. The sickness itself lasted some 20 short days. Its horrid scarring and pockmarks, however, lasted your lifetime. Your skin became deeply pitted, and you lost your eyebrows and eyelashes. You do not mention it in any of your letters, but I cannot imagine the effect it must have had on your self-image, how it must have strained your marital relations even further, and even how it must have made you the pity of the London social circles. You had already seen your own brother die from the disease. Although you tried to hide your face with face paint, it must have taken an extreme amount of courage to confront your life, as if your famed former beauty had nothing to do with who you were or what people saw in you. 4 months later, your husband received news of his appointment as ambassador to the Ottoman court, and by July, a mere 7 months after this life-changing event, you were on your way to Turkey. There is absolutely no pang of self-pity or jealous of others in your rapturous letters describing the stunning beauty of the women you met in Turkey. Yet I cannot help but feel you were particularly sensitive to it because your very own beauty had been lost, and that these women seemed all the more lovely in view of your own disfigurement. What courage it must have taken for you to enter that steam bath in front of 200 half-naked women, to expose your scars in front of all those beauties with skins shiningly white. What fortitude it must have taken for you to walk in front of dignitaries and the Sultan's court, thinking that all were whispering behind your back, pitying this poor English lady with such horrid skin. No wonder you repeat so often in your letters references to those skins shiningly white of Turkish women. Your own English porcelain rose skin was once as milky as theirs, but the dreaded bane of smallpox removed this vanity from you. In the beginning of your stay in Turkey, when you were in Adrianople, you witnessed something that must have been an astounding event for you, a victim of this dreaded curse. In an age when there was little understanding between Christian Europe and the Muslim Middle East, you were remarkable for your objectivity in encountering this new culture and what must have seemed like its odd customs. And this one must have seemed very odd indeed. You wrote in a long letter on April 1st, 1717, to your friend Sarah Chiswell, apropos of distempers, I am going to tell you a thing that I am sure will make you wish yourself here. The smallpox, so fatal and general amongst us, is here entirely harmless by the invention of engrafting, which is the term they give it. There is a set of old women who make it their business to perform the operation. Every autumn, in the month of September, when the great threat is abated, people send to one another to know if any of the family has a mind to have the smallpox. They make parties for this purpose, and when they are met, commonly 15 of 16 together, the old woman comes with a nutshell full of the matter of the best sort of smallpox, and asks what veins you please to have open. She immediately rips open that you offer to her with a large needle, which give you no more pain than a common scratch, and puts into the vein as much venom as can lie upon the head of her needle, and after binds up the little wound with a hollow bit of shell, and in this manner opens 4 or 5 veins. The children or young patients play together all the rest of the day, and are in perfect health till the 8th. Then the fever begins to seize them, and they keep their beds 2 days, very seldom 3. They have very rarely above 20 or 30 in their faces, which never mark, and in 8 days' time they are as well as before their illness. This engrafting that you witnessed was nothing less than an inoculation with dead smallpox virus against smallpox. Witnessing this event proved as life-changing for you as the original encounter with the disease, and gave you a chance to show your true mettle. For instead of running away from this procedure, which could have seemed heathen, your natural curiosity led you further, and you decided to inoculate your very own son in Turkey. Every year, thousands undergo this operation, and the French ambassador says pleasantly that they take the smallpox here by a way of diversion, as they take the waters in other countries. There is no example of anyone that has died of it, and you may believe I am very well satisfied on the safety of the experiment, since I intend to try it on my dear little son. With the help of a doctor from the British Embassy, you had the courage to perform the procedure on your 5-year-old son. In a letter to your husband in March 1718, you state, "The boy was engrafted last Tuesday, and is at this time singing and playing, and very impatient for his supper. I pray God my next may give as good an account of him." We forget today what horror this disease wrought in the world. In your 18th century alone, over 60 million people died of it. Your own Queen Mary II, under whose reign you were born, contracted it, and it killed 5 other European monarchs in that century. It destroyed the Incan Empire of Peru and the Aztecs of Mexico in the 16th century. It killed 90% of the Native American Indian population in the 18th century. The worst was reserved for young children, less than 5 years of age. 8 out of 10 of them would die of it, and of those who survived, a full third would become blind. It scarred Stalin and Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth I, and Abraham Lincoln. In the 20th century, over 300 million people continued to perish from this blight. Stocks of the smallpox virus still sit in secret labs in Russia, England, and the United States, ready to be used as biological warfare, a weapon which will prove more deadly than any nuclear bomb or missile head. Yet despite the raging devastation of the disease, a preventative treatment had been known for centuries. Known as inoculation, it was thought to have been practiced in India as early as 1000 BC, to be picked up later by the Chinese. The Indians rubbed smallpox pus into the skin lesions, and the Chinese had patients sniff ground smallpox scabs. In both cases, the patient would develop a mild case of the disease and would fully recover. It is also believed that the inoculation process was known to Arab doctors in the 6th century. Knowledge of these types of inoculation processes spread to Ottoman Turkey, where the practice became widespread, and that was exactly what you witnessed in Adrianople. The Turks used walnuts as the culture, injecting the nut meat with smallpox pus and letting it ferment in the warm protection of the shell. You finished your letter to Sarah Chiswell as follows: I am patriot enough to try to bring this useful invention into fashion in England, and I should not fail to write to some of our doctors very particularly about it if I knew any one of them that I thought had virtue enough to destroy such a considerable branch of their revenue for the good of mankind. But that distemper is too beneficial to them not to expose to all their resentment the hearty right that should undertake to put an end to it. Perhaps if I live to return, I may, however, have courage to war with them. And war with them you did. After returning from Turkey to England, you launched a fervent campaign to promote the practice, and crossing this bridge proved quite rocky. You were not perhaps the first person to relay information on inoculation to England. An Italian physician in Constantinople had submitted a report 4 years prior to your return. But it was you that they listened to. You had your daughter inoculated in public by the very same embassy physician that had treated your son in Constantinople. It is believed that your little Mary was the first person in England ever to be inoculated. You brought the method to the attention of the London College of Physicians, where some surgeons were courageous enough to conduct successful trial experiments. Your example and personal urgings led the royal family, aristocrats, and prominent politicians to inoculate their children, ushering in a period of popularity for the practice among the upper classes in England. Alas, the enthusiasm for it was short-lived. Despite the initial successes in the years of 1721 through 23, the religious opposition soon mounted against the practice of inoculation. The public debate on the issue was ferocious and extreme. Many so-called men of God believed that this procedure was against the will of God, who used smallpox as punishment for Satan's work, and to naturally control the populations of the poor. This foolishness tainted the medical profession as well, which began to resent that the successful procedure had not been discovered by their own ilk, but by shamans in non-Western countries, and that, to boot, this procedure was being promoted by a woman, that woman being you, Lady Mary. They tricked the results of test cases, published papers denouncing it, and sought to prove that the procedure had a higher death rate than once thought, and was responsible for the spread of other diseases, such as syphilis. The trend for inoculation died out, and you yourself began to regret that you had introduced this Turkish custom to your homeland, as it brought much persecution and disgrace to you and your family. Yet you persevered, not cringing from this very public controversy, by anonymously publishing a scathing pamphlet denouncing the knavery and ignorance of physicians, and placing the blame directly on them, not on the virus. If only people had listened to you, much heartbreak would have been spared you if they had. Your very own sister, Lady Gower, declined your invitation to have her son inoculated at the same time as little Mary. He died 2 years later of smallpox. The most ironic of tragedies happened when your friend, Sarah Chiswell, recipient of that enthusiastic, vigorous letter describing the engrafting events of Adrianople, died herself of the disease in 1726. Following the swirl of venom and controversy stirred up by you in England, the next chapter of your story picks up in my country. Your efforts were recognized in the New England, with several prominent doctors lending support to the movement, despite a swirl of controversy there as well. A slave from Barbados arrived in Boston in 1721 and explained how he had been inoculated in his native Sudan by the same scratch technique of Adrianople. This confirmed the original results your efforts launched in England, and American doctors began to use the technique. After a successful outcome of an epidemic in Boston in 1722, where the inoculated survived untouched, the practice became well accepted. George Washington ordered that inoculation be performed on all Revolutionary War soldiers who had not already had the disease. In this way, your efforts even participated indirectly in the victory of our War of Independence from your King George III. Your story then crossed back over the Atlantic to England. A very bright young man named Edward Jenner started to put all of the pieces together. As a boy, he observed that dairy workers who contracted the animal version of the disease, cowpox, never caught smallpox. After becoming a doctor, he never forgot this intuition, and after further research, he presented his observations in a paper to his local medical society. His theory became widespread in the Western world by 1800. He was courageous enough to inoculate his own son, like you did, Lady Mary, but this time not with smallpox, but with cowpox virus. His experiments and research led the way for the cowpox vaccine to be used as an immunization for smallpox in humans. A vaccination for smallpox had been found. You did not live to witness the success. Yet it was your daring to introduce the procedure and your tenacity to see it through that has saved millions of lives since, all over the world. Would it have been possible for Jenner to do what he had done 79 years later if you had not paved the way first? If you had not had the courage, fortified by your own personal horror with this disease, to confront all the naysayers and lead the way, I am certain that he and the other true men of science would not have been able to press on to find a way to a complete sweep of the disease. Your role was as important as any man of science and as powerful as any vaccine, for you had the broad-minded bravery to take on the medical community and public opinion, often as virulent as the pox you were trying to combat. After successful vaccination campaigns throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, the World Health Organization certified the eradication of smallpox in 1977. To this day, smallpox is the only human infectious disease to have been completely eliminated from the planet. That is your legacy to the world, Lady Mary, all stemming from the careful observation of a procedure in a small room in Ottoman Adrianople, and your conviction in its worth, and your courage to cross a bridge with it. Nevermore shall the curse, "A pox on your house," be heard in the land, except in plays by Shakespeare. Nevermore will mothers have to bear seeing their children die or being scarred by this plight. Now and forevermore, the mothers of the world will be able to kiss the soft, petaled, unscarred cheeks of their children, all because of a gift brought from a remarkable country, by you, a most extraordinary and courageous woman. With my most respectful reverence, Catherine Branning. The wretched Flavia, on her couch reclined, thus breathed the anguish of a wounded mind. A glass reverse in her right hand she bore, for now she shunned the face she sought before. How am I changed, alas! How am I grown? A frightful spectre to myself unknown. Where's my complexion? Where my radiant bloom, that promised happiness for years to come? Then, with that pleasure, I this face surveyed, to look once more, my visits oft delayed. Charmed with the view, a fresher red would rise, and a new life shot sparkling from my eyes. Ah, faithless glass, my wonted bloom restore, Alas, I rave, that bloom is now no more. Lady Montague, Flavia.